I feel like when I talk about Margo St. James that you should just begin by cueing the laugh track because my memories of Margo are all about laughter. So this is just not so much a letter, but just maybe a last chat. Um, I remember, I remember when we first met Margo, and it was at a party in Marin County in the early 70s. And there were a lot of parties in Marin County in the early 70s, if you lived in the Bay Area, and Oakland and San Francisco, and across the country, I'm sure. But anyway, I wasn't even living here then. I came out, and our good friend Margo, um, the author, Tom Robbins, it took me to that party. And of course, I didn't see him again for 2 or 3 days, but you and I kept crossing paths. You know, it was one of those big giant parties through the night. And at one point, you just took me by the hand and pulled me out into the woods. And there were woods in Marin County then. Now there's just houses everywhere. But anyway, and you had a big joint and we smoked a joint and I was doing mushrooms. I think you might have been too. And we just laughed and had fun for what seemed like hours. And yeah, that was my first memory of you. And as our paths have crossed, coming in and out of focus over the many decades since then, it's just been a friendship, you know, based on just kind of love and laughter. So thank you for all of that. I think just there's so many memories that have come to my head since I heard of your death, you know, in January. And but I think I'll just remember a couple of them. And one was at that party in Marin County. And after we were off, you know, by ourselves laughing and getting to know each other, you bent over and you untied your Keds or your Converse. I can't remember what you were wearing. And you put your feet in my lap and said, you know, do a girl a favor, rub my feet. So I came from a long line of family members who love to have their feet rubbed. So that seemed like the most normal thing ever. But over the years, as at different gatherings or whatever, many times your feet ended up in my lap for rubbing. So I don't know if you did that with a lot of people, a lot of your friends. I like to think that it was just something that you created for me, letting me rub your feet. So it was my honor, and I remember it fondly. The other big memory that I have is when we came back together for St. James Infirmary, and it was a day over at City Clinic. And you know, I heard you know, there was talk about, you know, Margo's trying to get this infirmary started, and, you know, Margo could get things done with the political bigwigs. So one day I was just working away at City Clinic, and through the door comes Margo and Priscilla Alexander, which was like, I'd never met Priscilla before, but I definitely knew her work. And I was just kind of stunned. You know, Priscilla had this notion and this concept of healthcare by and for sex workers. And so Margo and Priscilla and JB, Johanna Breyer, who I knew from some other work, um, and Carol Stewart, and can't remember if Dawn was there or not, but anyway, I remember seeing the four of them all in view at once, and I thought, whatever I have to do, whoever I have to blow, whatever, I'm going with them. And so that was the beginning of another beautiful, you know, time in my life with Margo and with those other incredible people. It was just, you know, it was just hard to, you know, fathom that we were all there together. So Margaret Jean, this is your day. Happy Margo St. James Day. You know, Tom Robbins called you the coyote trickster, and you were definitely a trickster. And you know, the coyote trickster is not just something that he came up with. It's deeply ingrained myth across Native communities across the country. The coyote as someone who was like Margo was, someone who had intelligence and stealth and knew how to get things done and how to help people in the way that they needed to be helped. And some of the myths of the coyote are also about, being an example of how negative behaviors like greed and recklessness and arrogance are things to be avoided. So Margo did all of those things for me and for you all and for people across the country. So thank you for that, Margo. And then I guess the biggest lesson that I ever learned from you, Margo, um, was two things. One, sort of going back to the coyote metaphor, was you taught me to always be wily. So to always be thinking in four different directions, so that if you had to make a turn, you already had the path laid out. So be nimble, be a shapeshifter as needed for our communities. Um, and the other thing, which I guess is the most important thing I think personally that you gave me, was that no never has a period behind it. I remember it was something about St. James Infirmary, and I was supposed to go ask somebody for permission or to get this or whatever, and they said no. And I went back to Margo and I said, "Oh, they said no." And she said, "You say that like there's a period behind it, but no, never has a period behind it. No is just your cue that there's a fork in the road, or maybe a couple of forks in the road, and it's time to go on one of those. But it never has a period. You never take no for an answer." Those of you who knew Margo personally will know that. I mean, she just made things happen. I mean, there were so many people who said no about St. James Infirmary. It was like she couldn't even hear that word. It was like she just went to the next step, and we were able to make it happen. Many people coming together, and I'm honored that that project that we could bring to fruition was Margo's last big, public project as a public figure. So my last memory of Margo is once she was back settled in up in the islands, Orcas Islands. We used to have phone calls, and it was very old school. You'd have to call and leave a message that you were at the bar or the pub, and then Margo would have to get the message, and at the agreed upon time, we'd call, and we talked about our families and taking care of our elders, and just friends catching up and talking. I just want to read a little bit of verse to you, Margo, just to say goodbye. Margo, you will always have a lucky star that shines because of what you are. Even in the deepest dark, your aim is true. And if I could only have one wish, Margo, then it would be this: love and happiness for you.